yeah, it was like this cosmic kind of high five. Like it felt like I was having this journey going through all the lessons I had learned on plant medicines or fungi medicines or other psychedelic like medicines. And it was kind of felt like when I came out of it, I kind of like, going down like all the people that hold and support you, and they were all going like, well done, you did that, kind of like this confirmation that you gotta, it's a forever journey of improving oneself and becoming a better human so that one can be better to other humans. But that I had been doing what I needed to do.
Welcome to Psychedelic Diaries. I am Ray Christian, and this episode will stimulate the mind. We'll discuss a massive microdosing trial, your right to explore, and of course, experiences on high doses of psychedelics. Dr. Pamela Kryskow from Roots to Thrive nonprofit will be here for a deep dive and a soul search. But first, as usual, let's start things off with a nugget and a noodle. In today's news nugget, Zide, the Oakland psychedelic church that allows for tax-free purchase of magic mushrooms, is back up and running and not shy about it. Since getting busted by the feds, their following has grown by 10x, turning psychedelic lemons into lemonade, apparently. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on of late, you have a right to explore consciousness. No rules, regulations, or rituals are required when it comes to your mind. You don't need a diagnosis, a doctor, or a diet. You don't need a prescription, pre-authorization, or a priest. Now, of course, some may want or prefer hand-holding, but others won't. I certainly didn't. White, black, brown, indigenous, medical, conservative, liberal, nobody gets authority over your consciousness. The real magic of psychedelics is that they unlock what's already inside you. If you use them haphazardly, yes, you may not be ready when you uncover unpleasantness within. On the other hand, if you approach with intention in a way that's meaningful for you, it can unlock profound beauty within. Curiosity, creativity, calm can help you discover your purpose, your connection to everything, your creator. So what's the best way to help the masses explore consciousness? Something to noodle on. Our next guest is a physician, board member at Psychedelic Association of Canada and medical lead at Roots to Thrive, one of my favorite nonprofits, Dr. Pamela Kryskow. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ray. It's really nice to be here.
Okay, well, let's dive right in. Pamela, I loved your quote. You said, lean in and look at the science. There was an error made by politicians. Now, you are in the belly of the beast with your medical practice and your impressive 12,000 person microdosing research trial. For the layman, what is the science telling us about psilocybin magic mushrooms?
Well, right now at clinicaltrials.gov, there is 97 registered psilocybin studies. So it tells us that the scientific community and the medical community are really interested again, first off and foremost. Of course, we know from clinical trials that psilocybin helps quite a bit with treatment-resistant depression and major depressive disorders. So that's pretty impressive. And then, of course, we have a lot of anecdotes, right? We think that with the case reports that are coming out, we think that perhaps there's something about it that may perhaps help with COVID long, certainly with neurological challenges such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, potentially traumatic brain injury, also called TBI. So on the neurophysiological, those kind of, like I said, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that sort of stuff, but also on the mood disorders. So depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD. So, if we look at it purely from the Western perspective, those are some of the things. If we look at it further back from our, all of us being indigenous to somewhere on this planet, but our First Nations use of it, across the globe, like as you know, psilocybin mushrooms are circumpolar, and they, so across the planet, people have used these mushrooms. And so what did we use them for way back then? Some of that will always be a mystery, but, certainly there's been many people who have written about this. And, maybe we use them just for our consciousness, just to expand our creativity, to meet our maker, our creator. There's a lot of unknowables. So I think that modernly, we've seen them used for, what we would call medical diagnoses. And then historically, we probably used them for that and beyond, expanding our consciousness.
So you are one of the true thought leaders in this space, Pamela. And I got to ask, because you kind of alluded to it, I think, what are your thoughts on the stoned ape theory? This idea of an unknowable, unprovable theory that perhaps the mushrooms are what helped us turn from apes to what we are now.
Right. Well, I think that's very kind of you to call me a thought leader. The reality is I stand on the shoulders of a lot of people that have done a lot of work before me, and I just get the privilege and the honor of being able to pick up where they have gotten us to and continue the thought and continue some work on that, and both on the service delivery and the research side. So I think it's really important to honor those who have come before us and done this work. Nobody's doing this alone. Nobody's knowledge is brand new. We're always building on somebody else's knowledge. And I really feel quite honored to live in this time and space that I can actually talk openly about this, about the science, and that we're moving forward on this. So I think it's very plausible. Like when you think of the neuroplasticity that we now know, like quite often we know things before we can prove them scientifically, right? We know there's certain processes that happen, but then we don't have the tool to measure it. Like we didn't have functional PET scans before. We didn't have functional MRIs. We didn't have CT scans. We didn't even have X-ray. And now as we get each iteration of moving forward in our technology, we start to be able to then measure in some sort of way what we intuitively knew, and that's like the citizen scientist, right? If you like something. And so the stoned ape theory, getting back to your question, I think is very plausible. I know that if I am microdosing, I'm smarter, right? And my word finding is better, and I can tangibly feel that. So that is not a scientific study, but it is an N of one, me being the expert of me and noticing what changes I'm having when I'm using a substance or not. And any substance, like I know after I eat a really good meal of vegetables, I feel better. I know after I eat a bag of chocolate chip cookies, I feel worse. That's still scientific. That's still the observational scientist in us. And I don't want to ever diminish that. So I think what we're going to find as our imaging gets more robust and at a higher level, that we will probably be able to, image that level of neuroplasticity in real time, as opposed to in a petri dish or in dissected animal models.
That's outstanding. And I appreciate this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants. Sometimes I think, are any of these ideas truly mine, or did I see in some credit card commercial 5 years ago? But I stand by my statement. I think you are one of the thought leaders. I also think you are one of the Renaissance women in this space, in addition to all the work you're doing on the medical side, the scientific side. When we spoke, Pamela, you told me you're an avid kayaker. You love perma-gardening. And then I saw your affinity to daydreaming in the hammock. And personally, I find myself dancing and singing much more after psilocybin use. What is it about magic mushrooms that seems to unlock our ability to play and daydream like a child again?
Yeah, great question. We're in challenging times. Not everybody, but some of us are, that where we're busier than ever before. Our to-do lists are longer, and we're not as connected with our environment. And there's something about, being on a substance that just slows you down and opens up your observational skills. So anyone, you watch a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 3-year-old play at the edge of the ocean where the water's lapping up, and you watch that wonder and awe, and them seeing the water, the rocks, throwing rocks, seeing the little sea life. We lose that as we get older, as we get so much busier, and these fungi and plant medicines bring us back into our bigger brain. It also gets us out of our fight, flight, flee part of the brain, the amygdala, that is, keeping us in our sympathetic instead of our parasympathetic, where our eyes get bigger and we take in the landscape and we go, wow, look at the beauty of bark. We look at trees all day long, but have you ever walked up to a tree and really looked at
the intricacy of the bark of how that is growing, or
Yes.
or the leaves on a cedar tree, and there's just the absolute artistry. I mean, if we really slowed down and looked at these things much more fully, like, we would have so many more creative ideas in our life. Just the and that's what they do. You know, they get us back there into the bigger brain out of the smaller brain, I think, is the way I like to explain it to my patients, that we take through these medicines. And, you know, they come back and they're like, you know, I got down on the floor with my grandkids and I played with them and I was curious again. You know, that artistry that we bring back to ourselves. We're all creative in some way, music, creation, whatever. Women making making humans. You know, it's so it really can bring us back to that. And it makes me a better doctor being there. You know, if I'm more grounded and more caring about the environment and the climate, and, you know, the care of my patients and what they eat and the quality of what the food they eat and the quality of interactions they have with me and their family, you know, that's these medicines that do that. They get us grounded and back to the foundations of what is really important about being a human being.
Oh, that's beautifully put. And I like this idea of just being in awe of a tree again. And I have seen that on some of my experiences, and the wonder, the intricacy, the depth, the nuance, the infinity within a tree. So much so that at times I've almost felt like I'm not even a human. I'm like a walking organism. I'm a walking tree. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. But speaking of the childlike enthusiasm and kind of merging that with the healing, I saw you mention the story of the accidental consumption of psilocybin by children with remarkable outcomes. For instance, an eating disorder in a 7-year-old that appeared to be cured.
Yeah.
Why do you think psilocybin has such versatility with its healing capacity?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. And I don't really fully know the answer to that. You know, when you think of the complexity of humans and the complexity of our interactions and our experience in life and what we do and what we encounter, same with children with their, you know, from conception in utero to birth to growing up. Like we have such, you know, these incomprehensible permutations of possibilities of what we encounter and how it lands and how we become. And yet, you know, when we work with our patients with these medicines, you know, no person in our program is the same. They have common challenges, very common human challenges, from PTSD, burnout, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, soothing behaviors, etc. And yet, such different experiences and such different insights, and even the priority of their healing, the order of it. You know, the fact that some people have to deal with something in the proximal time, and some people have to deal something in the distant past. So why does an accidental ingestion of psilocybin help a 7-year-old with extreme disordered eating? While at the other point, it allows a pianist to come up with the most beautiful piece of music. And on the other hand, it helps a firefighter go back to work because their PTSD no longer exists, or our CMP police officer go back to, you know, engaging with his family because he no longer is a shell of a human being from all the trauma they've witnessed. Like that complexity is fascinating, and we should keep asking that question. Like, why does something like this? Why does another organism, a fungi from the kingdom of fungi, interact with us from the kingdom of animals in such a way that it happens in so many different ways? Like, we can try to be reductionist in it, which is what we do in science. We try to reduce it down to if this, then that. You know, and that's good. That helps move us forward in a lot of things. But on the complexity, on the bigger level of the big science and big, you know, spirituality, why does it hit so many things? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that. And I suspect that that we as humans are perhaps not yet quite tapped into our power of knowing to know why it works on so many levels. In fact, we don't even fully appreciate all the receptors it acts on, like on the simple basic science. We don't even know why this person has way more of this receptor being bound versus this one. Well, who knows? I don't know. I have no answer for your question, but it's an engaging thing. It's a nice thing to chew on and think about.
I might fight you. That was a pretty good answer to that question. And you made me think of this idea of your patients being different with their struggles in very different ways and nuances. It reminded me of that old Anna Karenina principle of every happy family is the same. Every unhappy family is uniquely unhappy. And I wonder what psilocybin is doing to the brain to get some fundamental, irreducible creativity or curiosity or connectivity. But perhaps to your point, maybe some things are just better left forever unknown, and we don't need the answers to all of them. Speaking of the unknown and perhaps some irreversible changes, Pamela, I want to thank you for being a bold leader in this space, for doing what you're doing, the beautiful extemporaneous articulation, the thought leadership, and coming out of the psychedelic closet ain't easy, I know. And there's no going back once you're out. And I'm curious for you, what was your thought process as you decided to start talking about your journey?
When I had actually come back from Peru, I had been in Peru. My habit is to go down and work with a husband and wife couple that is long in the lineage of ayahuasca. And I was doing that about every 2 to 3 years as I felt ready. And I had come back, after I don't know how many times of having gone down before, and was out for dinner with 5 other physicians. And I had just come back and they asked, "Oh, how was Peru?" And I don't know, it was just an urge to say, just be honest about it instead of saying, I was there as a tourist. Is going out. I go down, I do ayahuasca every couple of years to really get some, cleanup of old crap and move on and get some healthiness in my life and balance in my life. And it turns out that all 5 of them had been down to Peru and had done ayahuasca. And we laughed our heads off about how much we are in the closet and trained to be a bit in the closet in medicine and in healing in healthcare professionals. That it's really this odd thing, and I think I'm just going to be blunt. I blame England. They're the colonizers, and we have so many of these crap ways of being because of those kind of puritanical belief systems, and. So we don't, and we were taught in medicine to, keep your personal and you as a person separate from your professional. And, that doesn't allow us to be whole humans. We don't like that. It doesn't feel right. And yet you're kind of taught that. And so, we don't talk about this stuff. And so here we were talking about it and about how much our experience, all of us, how much it had really helped us and really gotten us through some really challenging health issues in some people's case, and other people in big life transitions like divorces, changes of roles, like going from single and independent to being, parent of twins. Like this was the group conversation about how much these medicines, ayahuasca, had helped us be fundamentally better people, better physicians, better family members, better friends, better colleagues. And we weren't talking about it. And so it was just kind of a turning point. It just kind of turned, and I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about this. I need to be able to show up as Pam, the whole human, as a physician, as just as much as I'm Pam, the whole human, who is also happens to be a physician or happens to be a kayaker or a gardener, etc. And so, so that was the turning point. And it was just really talking about a lot more. I had already been following what was going on with Johns Hopkins with their psilocybin studies, and was like, we're gonna move here. And knowing that my first degree too, it was really helpful for me to talk more about it because I already knew the stigma. My first degree was criminology. So I already knew about all the war on drugs and the consequences of it to our prison populations, to families being broken up, to the stigma of throwing people in jail for, often life in some cases for just using substances that, expanded their consciousness. And I also knew the science that there were thousands of studies before the war on drugs. There were thousands of studies on LSD and psilocybin. Yes. And I know my therapist friends, they talk this time in the 80s where, you know, psychiatrists and psychologists were training with MDMA, and they were loving it because it was one of the best tools they had for couples therapy. And in fact, how many of the therapists, when they found out that MDMA was getting scheduled, they were hoarding it. They were like getting as much of it as they could because it was such a great tool. Like, it was a psychotherapeutic tool for the benefit of their patients. And so you put all that together, and it just kind of, you know, sometimes you just need enough information in your life to push you into a tipping point, and it suddenly felt very comfortable for me. And there's a really lovely quote from Wade Davis that I love. I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, sometimes what we all need to do is we need to do what's necessary, and then first and foremost do what's necessary, and then second, see if it's possible or permissible. And so that has been a bit of my mantra, is like, you know what, as a physician, it is absolutely necessary that I get the best options for my patients, period. Whether that's yoga, meditation, whether it's interventional cardiology or imaging or a certain medicine, or get them off of a medicine, whatever. And so it has to be what's necessary to return people to whole health. That's why I came out of the closet and spoke honestly, and then got involved with was one of the founding board members of the it was at that time it was called the Canadian Psychedelic Association. Now the name's changed to the Psychedelic Association of Canada. And it was one of the founding board members. And I was very intentional about that it was really important that on this board there be a professional there to show professionals this is legitimate, and you're welcome. You're welcome here. You're welcome in an organization that is going to bridge underground, above ground, unregulated professionals, regulated professionals, the community, policymakers, bureaucrats, scientists, like that said, the doors are wide open. Everyone is welcome. Doesn't matter your background, your culture, your race, your income. Like, the doors have to be wide open so that we as a Canadian community can come together and make this world a better place.
Wow. I appreciate that insight. We want to have someone to blame. Look at those limey bastards in Britain. You heard it here first, Dr. Kryskow. I'm just kidding. But you're right. Some of that stuff came from there. And we love our UK friends. We love all you guys.
I know, I do too. I have so many friends. But when I just had this epiphany like a while ago, I was like, there's so many of these puritanical things. Where did they come from? Because they're not circumpolar. A lot of this stuff, right? Like, anyone that's had the privilege of traveling, you know, like Northern Europeans don't have these same belief systems. Folks from the continent of Africa don't have these belief systems. Like, they're so diverse, and yet here, you know, these anyways, I don't want to blame anyone. We're responsible for making the change in the world we want. And so we'll just do that.
Yeah, not to go off too much in outer space on that, but I'm with you. It almost feels like sometimes it's almost like it's deterministic. At some point, some country, when there was a rise in technology and abilities, whether it was England or Nigeria or Argentina, was going to get to a point, if they were the one in power and there was the ability to colonize, that country would have colonized. It was deterministic. It was going to happen. Just so happened that it was England, and here we are. But I think we're unlearning a lot of that stuff. Speaking of unlearning, I would love to take a stab at the ineffable with you, if you don't mind. I'll tell a quick story and I'll kick it to you. One mystical experience. So, Pamela, I had an experience on 4 grams of magic mushrooms where it felt almost like a rediscovery of my body. And later in the trip, when some gentle movement was possible, I engaged in these light stretches, and it was as if the physics of the movements and the sensations left me with this profound awe of my own human body. And I'm curious for you, what is one mystical experience that still resonates?
I think there's a lot, and they come together. And there was one experience I had it was actually in a training program that I was doing many over a decade and a half ago on psychedelics. And in the medicine experience, it was almost like I'm pretty skeptical. And so if somebody had told me this, I'd like totally not believe them, but it's mine. So I believe me. um, yeah, it was like this cosmic kind of high five. Like it felt like I was having this journey going through all the lessons I had learned on plant medicines or fungi medicines or other psychedelic like medicines. That it was like we, the bigger universal we, us, me, told you to do this. You needed to change this, and you did it. Well done. And then you had this patterning, and you saw how it was destructive, and you changed it. Well done. And it was kind of this like this is where you've come from. These are all the big changes you have learned and integrated and put into your life. And it was kind of felt like when I came out of it, I kind of like, going down like all the people that hold and support you. And then they were all going like, well done, you did that. Kind of like this confirmation that you're not done. You gotta, it's a forever journey of improving oneself and becoming a better human so that one can be better to other humans. But that I had been doing what I needed to do to take me to those levels. And so it was really lovely. Like, it was just really nice to feel held, like in that way of like, whether it was myself just acknowledging that, you have evolved as a human being and you continue to evolve and you lean into change. You don't lean away from it. You lean into tension and you looked yourself in the mirror and said, Pam, you got to change this, and you did it. And again, I'm not done. I'm not like a million years from being, ever done on where I would hope to be as a human. But yeah, that was pretty mystical, and it was nice. It was really nice. It was just, and it's often what we hear with our patients and friends and family that say, it just kind of feels like the universe has got your back. It's cheering for you.
Thank you for that share. That is exquisite. I appreciate that. There's no way to top that. That's a good way to wrap up the deep dive and switch over to the speed round soul search. Okay.
Let's go. Here we go.
Question number 1 is Friday night, Pamela. It's been a long week. You don't want to cook. You just want to unwind. What is your ideal takeout order?
Oh, Indian by far. Palak paneer. Love it.
Question number 2. Who did you idolize as a child?
You know what? No one, actually. I didn't have any heroes, really. I know that's odd. I had wonderful people around me. Yeah, and I still don't. I mean, I have people I adore. I have people I think are amazing, but I don't really idolize anyone.
Okay, question number 3. What is the hardest part of high-dose psychedelic journeys?
I think in high-dose journeys, when set and setting is done well, when preparation is done well, there's no hard part. I think that I think it's incredibly important to be in awe of the potential of these medicines and not take them lightly. And maybe that's the challenge, is the people taking it a bit too lightly. I think we should take ceremony and the ability to be a better human very, very solemnly, like very thoughtfully. So I don't think there's anything hard about it. I just want people to really think of the implications of doing something that's really, really that meaningful.
Fourth and final question, Pamela. Who is one person that has had a dramatic impact on your career?
Well, certainly my partner. He's challenged me. Paul has challenged me to think above and beyond where I had thought before. Always take it to the next question. Always take it to the next scientific inquiry. Like really, really think deeply, why? And not stop at that answer and then ask again, why? So.
That's wonderful. Stab in the dark. Is that Paul Stamets? Is that your partner?
Yeah. He is the most curious, heart-opened scientist I have ever met. He will never stop learning. Never, ever.
Wow, I hope my future partner talks about me like that. Okay, that was a wonderful deep dive and soul search, Pamela. Where can the viewers find you?
They can find me with my wonderful team at Roots to Thrive nonprofit, rootstothrive.com. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm on LinkedIn, and the rest of social media I pretty much ignore. I get out in the garden. You can find me in my garden or in a kayak.
Find her in the kayak. Pamela, you were fantastic. Thank you for joining the show. Go check out Roots to Thrive and consider joining Dr. Kryskow's incredible microdosing study. Next week, Hisu Cho, CEO of Sabi Mind, will be joining. Come join me and other solo explorers at the soiree. Thank you for watching this episode of Psychedelic Diaries. I'm Ray Christian for Dr. Pamela Kryskow. See you next time.